How's it going, everyone? My name is Shizukira, and today I wanted to kind of talk about some of the guides and stuff we've seen popping up recently. With the game being less than 2 weeks away now, we've started to see some more beginner stuff coming out. We're starting to see recommendations for characters and teams and to build this and that. And I just wanted to talk about why I think people should be a lot more skeptical about these things than they are, because a lot of the information we have at the moment isn't great. And I want to kind of talk about what patch we were playing on the playtest, as well as some things we heard in the recent dev commentary, and just kind of showing where things don't line up to give people an idea of why the information we have isn't super accurate and why everything really needs to be taken with a grain of salt. So we have Pridwin here as an example. They have their reroll guide, and they're currently recommending that you reroll for Khalip. And if we're going to go off the playtest information, I agree with that. I do think in the playtest, Khalip was the strongest unit that we had in terms of 5 stars, although I say that in terms of everyone, to be honest. She was the strongest unit, but there are several reasons to be a little bit skeptical of that, so that's what we're going to go over now. So first, let's talk about the patch we played on. Now, in the playtest, there were a lot of things that seemed kind of broken. There are things not working as intended, things like Maylin's ult, which was doing something completely different to what it was saying, and even what it was saying wasn't lining up in various places. We have descriptions that were completely off. A good example of that would be with Tressa, where her card was applying poison, but it wasn't actually applying poison. We spoke about that a little bit in the review. But one of the big indicators that we were playing an outdated patch is this original showcase they did, the Protogenesis. This is 2 months ago, coming up on 3 months now. In fact, tomorrow will be 3 months since this released. And when we take a look at this video, one thing we immediately notice is keywords. We have descriptions for the things that the cards do, which is something that was notably missing when we played the playtest. Now, this was somewhat addressed in the recent dev commentary from 5 days ago, which I have some skepticism about, which we will get to. But yeah, they do mention here that they want to improve the tooltips for certain keywords and functions because some didn't work correctly during the playtest. Some is an understatement because none except for Epiphany and some of the gold ones were working. But either way, this implies that they weren't working on the playtest and now they are working on getting it to work again. But this isn't the only sign that what we were playing is genuinely an old patch and not one that was just randomly missing keywords that they decided to not fix during the test for some reason. So one of the things we notice in the character select screen that was notably missing for us, it's kind of hard to see here, but you can almost see behind me that it says the save data max capacity here is very low. But we take a look at Protogenesis and we have a number here, in this case nearly 40,000 terabytes for a stage 10 run, which interestingly in the game we could only see that there were 6 stages. We didn't get to see all 10, and this is the same mode. This is Chaos Manifestation, and we see here it is also Chaos Manifestation. But changing the amount of stages isn't really a crazy thing. That could just be something that was changed over time. But to see that we no longer have the save data max capacity is an interesting one. Another kind of weird difference is you'll notice the UI here looks quite a bit different to what we saw in game. So this is what we saw in game. We kind of have the background from the previous fight that we were in, and then we just see the other two kind of just thrown on there, like the 2 nodes that we can go to next. But on here, we have a lot more detail with what we can see. We even have like this bar on the side to show depth. You know, the background, we're seeing a lot more detail in there and stuff. Again, this could be a design change, but I think this looks a lot better. So I struggle to understand why they would change this. And then we go forward a little bit more. We get the animation for clicking on the next area. Okay, cool. And then we get this cool jump in animation that we see from the characters, right? So as they're coming in, you can literally see this like golden portal that almost looks like Cassius is opening. But then when we go over to what we had in game, we get the animation, but the jump in is completely gone. It's just a standard jump in. We get Khalip's bird flying, sure, but it feels like something is largely missing here. And then we just have differences like, for example, they have Haru in this patch. But another interesting one, which we saw before, is they also have Adelheid in this patch as well, which we were missing in the playtest. Now, maybe that's because she's not in the game on release, we don't know. In fact, in the playtest, we didn't even have a rate up banner. Is it because they just had it disabled? Is it because that build didn't have the rate up banner yet? We don't really know. But either way, the keywords not being present in the playtest is kind of our main indicator that we were playing something a little outdated. Now, I mentioned before that in here, this feels like a response to the playtest, but there were some things that were kind of questionable about it. And it mostly comes down to the way they talk about the breakdown system a little later on. So in this later part of the video, we actually see a segment where they play one of Ray's breakdown cards and she retaliates and hits her own team. Now, it says 1,000 damage here. Apparently they have 10,000 health. This is most likely just simulated stats. I doubt this is what it would really look like number-wise in game. But then they also show that they can kind of act weirdly. He even mentions that they can suddenly recover. And the reason I point this out is because here's the thing. The playtest ended on the 21st or 22nd, and this video came out on the 3rd of October. So we're talking about a week and a half between these two things happening. The issue is, when you think about this from a game development standpoint, they would need to get all the feedback that was given during the playtest. They would need to decide that this is an important thing that needs to be worked on, more than sorting out the text that is in cards and other cards just straight up not working. They would need to be prioritizing this. They would have to think up a system to make breakdown more interesting, which in this case they've chosen to go with sometimes they act weird, sometimes they instantly recover, sometimes they hit their own teammates. They then need to think about how to implement this. Do they want to have a chance for it to happen every card? What is the chance they want that to happen? How much damage are they going to do to their own teammates? They need to work on doing the animations. This is also something that not just one person decides, we're going to do this. Multiple teams need to come together. There needs to be meetings and stuff that need to happen to get this stuff into motion. And this video needs to be recorded for it to go out. And another thing worth noting is that they weren't working on October 3rd because of a holiday that they have in Korea. It goes from the 3rd until the 9th of October, which means you're telling me that a team that still needs to work on translations, that has card text in the cards that isn't meant to be there, like headers and stuff that's meant to modify how the text looks, you're not meant to be able to see that text. And with Maylin's ult being completely broken in the playtest, that same team, in less than a week and a half, managed to brainstorm the ideas for this system, managed to make the animations for it, managed to implement it and code it into the game after having all the meetings and stuff, and have that all ready for this video to come out a week and a half later. It's way more likely this was already a system they were working on pre-playtest. So when they say things like, we heard your feedback, we're going to implement keywords, I'm wondering how much of that is we heard feedback and how much of that is you were on an old patch, but we're just not going to tell you that. You know, it almost gives the vibe of like a simulated devs listened, when it's more like devs already made this, they just hid it so they could tell you they listened, right? It's kind of tinfoil hat conspiracy theory land. But I just don't think they'd be able to respond to the feedback and implement this into the game ready to show within a week and a half, especially when you need to consider TGS was going on. They had developers and staff that were at TGS instead of in Korea working on the game. Obviously, they had some people there, but you would have been missing parts of your staff because they would have been in Japan for TGS. Now, this next part is the most important, because whether you believe that the playtest was an up-to-date patch or you believe that it was something potentially older than Protogenesis, which again, 3 months ago, but considering that's just when the video was uploaded, the patch could be 3.5, 4, it could be many months ago. Whichever one of those you believe doesn't particularly matter when it comes to the next thing that was said in the dev commentary. So right after we see what we do, he mentions here, fourth, we will be focusing on balance work. Then goes on to say some cards that are overly powerful or underusable, which I assume he just means underpowered, will be adjusted based on data. What this says to me is if you think Khalip in her playtest state, which even when the game comes out, for the record, the playtest would still be a month old. A lot of change is going to happen in that time. So whether you believe it's a month-old patch or a 4+ month-old patch, they've even said here, things that felt overly powerful are going to be adjusted. So when people are saying, guys, pull Khalip, she was so strong in the playtest, that might be the exact reason she won't be as good in the live game. We don't know these things yet. Moving on, he says that in particular, epiphany values are going to be getting a rebalance. So again, the game is based around getting epiphanies to make your deck as strong as possible. So regardless of the state of the starter cards, the non-epiphanied version of the cards, whether a character is good or not is mostly going to come down to their epiphanies, as well as obviously you have their potential tree, you have their duplicates, you have memory fragments, all that stuff. So there's a lot of different factors, but epiphanies are a big one. So with those being rebalanced, we can expect to see a lot of change happening. Going a little bit forward here, he mentions reworking common cards and equipment from unknown spots. So in this case, we're probably going to see a lot of other characters that maybe weren't as good being a lot better with some of these common cards being buffed. Now, there are a lot of strong common cards in the game already, but there's definitely a lot that are really underwhelming, not quite worth their cost. Maybe they exhaust when they're not really good enough to justify being an exhaust card. You'd rather just not have it at all. And then the last point to mention here is when talking about monetization, we have here, we're also working to ease the burden of CZN's limit break system ego manifestation, but down here, which he doesn't say, and I think a lot of people miss, we are adjusting character performance differences through ego manifestation compared to the limited playtest, which means the value of duplicates is looking to be different than what it currently is. So as an example of that, a recommendation that we have here from Pridwin, and this isn't to call out Pridwin, this is just the easiest on-screen example to show, and I'd rather bring up a website than bring up one specific individual, because that feels a lot harsher than just a website with a team of people. But here, they point out the E1 for Cassius and the E1 for Mika. Now, I do not disagree that Cassius and Mika are really, really strong characters. I think Cassius gets a little bit more glaze than he should, and I'll probably talk about that at some point in the future, but he is still an amazing character, and so is Mika. But my only point is that here they're pointing out the strength of his E1, the strength of Mika's E1. These could be completely different when the game comes out. We also have here, and her E6 speeds up her AP generation considerably, lowering the tide/wave requirements to 2 stacks. But we don't know that that's what's going to happen on the live release. So again, this isn't me calling out a specific person, creator, or anything like that. I just want people to be aware, be careful when you are watching these early guides and these early recommendations, because a lot of them are based on data that even best case scenario is a month old, and worst case scenario is more than 4 months old by the time the game comes out. And we even have confirmation from just a few days ago from the team saying, yes, we are looking at characters, we're looking to change numbers, we're looking to change dupes, which means anything is on the table. The patch that we get on release could feel completely different from the patch that we have in the playtest. Now, some people will know I do have my spreadsheet, which is effectively a giant guide and has all the cards. But when we come over to the tier list, specifically, I have put here ranks are placeholder, and for the tier chart, they are also placeholder. These were the ranks that I assigned characters during the playtest. Some of them could do with moving around. Kayron could be moved, and Rin could also be moved. But the reason I haven't done my big video on this yet, and I've only really just shared it around, is because I know a lot of this is going to change on release day. And again, I will make the big video on this. We have the whole partner list here. We're going to have builds and recommendations for all the different characters, all the different stuff to run with them. Their full deck is down here too. All the keywords you could imagine are also put in here for all the characters whenever they are relevant. And same up here, you have ego skill and stuff. But I don't want to advertise this and say, hey everyone, here's the giant mega guide, which by the way is all outdated. You know what I mean? I want to make sure that the information on this is accurate. So for anyone who is seeing this ahead of time, I will be streaming the game on release day. After that stream ends, I will be going into this guide and I will be going through and correcting as much as possible immediately. Within 24 hours of release, my goal is to have every single card for every single character fully up to date with their new description, making sure all the keywords are underlined and have all their different descriptions as well. And I will try to get this done within the first 24 hours. I do have some characters that I will be putting a priority on. So over here, we have the list of characters so people can see when they are updated. And Maylin, Selena, and probably Khalip as well, in case she is still incredibly strong, will be on the priority list for the first characters that I adjust. So if you do see the spreadsheet within the first 24 hours of the game, you can have a look over here and just be like, oh, okay, this character is or isn't updated yet. and then you know how reliable that information is. As for actual recommendations, those will probably come within the first week or so. We need to get to endgame first, and then once they get towards endgame, then we can start really testing out these characters with their full potential and the gear that they want and the teams that they want and stuff. It will also give me a chance to talk with other people who get characters that I don't, and I can kind of ask them, how's this character performing? Who are you running them with? What gear are they running on and stuff like that. So the full video on this will come out at a later date, but for now, this is a thing that exists. But I'm very specifically not making a huge announcement video for it or anything yet, because I'm aware that a lot of this is going to change and you guys should be aware of it too. So I will have this in the description if people do want to read what the different characters do and all that stuff. Maybe you want to do a little bit of theory crafting, but do keep in mind that a lot of things are going to change. So that's going to be it from me. I just kind of wanted to go over these different guides and stuff that are coming out, and just to make you guys aware that we do know that a lot of changes are coming. We do know that a lot of changes have already happened. One thing I actually forgot to show in this video is we know that Aulia has had a card cost change because her Growing Creatures card was a 1 cost in the playtest, but we have since seen that that is actually a 0 cost card now. We actually saw this at TGS because of the cosplayers behind that. I should just get the image. So here you can see Growing Creature in the playtest is a 1 cost card, but at TGS behind the cosplayers, they were showing the cards, and this is Growing Creatures, but it is a 0 cost now. Now, you could say maybe it was a 0 cost and they sent this to TGS before the playtest came out, and there's a lot of reasons this could be. I'm not saying this is 100% solid fact. On release, it will be 0 cost. My point is just things are still changing. So there's going to be a lot of people saying, hey guys, on day 1, if you're re-rolling, pull for Khalip, try and get this character, get this card, run with this team, blah blah. Guys, if there's ever been a gacha game where I can confidently say just pull waifu and you will win, or husbando, maybe you want, Hugo or Luke or something, this is the game where it can be done. Like, genuinely, every character in this game is viable. I have talked so much smack about Amir. People know how low I rate Amir. At one point, she was the only D tier unit. In my how much I want combatants list, I have put her in the bottom tier several times because I'm not a fan of Amir at all. But people made her work. She can be good. Would I like to see her get some buffs on the release? Of course I would. But she's still really good, and she still can be used in the right situation, with the right team, with the right cards. So, as with every gacha game, some characters will be easier to build compared to others. But if there's ever been a game where I can confidently say, yeah, any character you get is going to work, it's this game. So yeah, I've rambled enough. The link for this, if you really want it, will be in the description. I will be streaming Blue Protocol, which is going to be coming out soon. Honestly, how long is it? 12 hours? Okay, yeah. So I'm probably going to edit this video, get a few things finished up, and then get some rest, ready to play Blue Protocol. But other than that, I hope you all have an amazing rest of your day, night, whatever it may be for you. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Stay safe.